Welcome to the Rabbi and the Shrink. This is Dr. Margarita Guri. I happen to be the Shrink, and here is my very favorite rabbi,
Jonathan Goldson.
And the good rabbi and I are delighted to have with us David E. Marlow again. Hi.
Hello, it's great to see you guys.
Welcome, David.
Well, David is known as the Ikigai guy, which is just fun to say. He's going to talk to us about how we can use the principles of the Ikigai and a few other things that he has in mind. He's not your usual guy. He's a former Marine sergeant, hoorah, a DJ, no less, a certified network engineer, and he's a design thinker, which I don't even know what that is, but Cornell does because they taught him that, and he's got a certificate. One of the things that I love about him is he calls himself a versatile guru. He's got lots to share. He goes way beyond coaching to help us find the meaning in our life and in our work. Welcome, talk to us. Help us find meaning. Where do we start?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So happy to be here. And where do we find meaning? Well, Rabbi and I were just talking prior about basketball and the meaning of life. You know, there's a lot of connections to basketball and the meaning of life, but I don't think that's where we want to go today.
I think we can always start there. I love basketball.
You have to put the ball through the hoop. You have to rebound. You have to defend.
And at the end, the thing that never mind, speaking of meaning, they cut out this very expensive, rope of the hoop. What? As a mother, I'm thinking, really, do you have to? Speaking of meaning, so I'm not sure the meaning of that.
Oh yeah, that's a keepsake. That's for the when they play at that high level, those nets wear out fairly quickly. So it's actually not that big a loss.
Oh, I see. So they would have to anyway. So it's symbolic keepsake. I got it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a coveted thing to have from a championship, and not that I know. I finished second a couple times in high level basketball and did not get to cut the nets down. So I would have really liked to have wasted a net or two, but did not get to do that.
Well, I hope you someday get a chance to have one of your coveted dirty old hoops. That would be good.
That would be great. Yeah.
I think about the germs of those things, but anyway, that's separate.
Can you give us a brief definition of Ikigai?
Yeah. So Ikigai is your purpose, your reason for getting up in the morning. And it's that unique expression of you in every aspect of your life, your gifts, your passions, your interests, your skills, and your place to impact in the world. And when you're spending your time in your Ikigai doing what only you can uniquely do, that's when you're really becoming the best you that you can be, when you're living in that moment and living into that. And the great thing about your Ikigai, once it really becomes clear to you, it becomes a core expression of your essence, of you. And you're doing and you're being, and it's like a guide. It's like a North Star. And it's this incredible opportunity for things to just sort of fall into place, and you naturally reframe your focus and your energy, and doors begin to open for you that you didn't even know existed. So that's what I love about sharing about Ikigai.
Well, the rabbi and I were talking today about the Ikigai, and we asked each other about each other's Ikigai. And the question came to mind is, does it have to be specific? Because doing God's will or serving others, are those specific enough Ikigais? Yeah,
and so the great thing about it, that's a thing that I know I struggle with myself. So I grew up in the evangelical church in the 70s, right? And a lot of emphasis on that was finding God's will and don't miss God's will. And if you don't do this and you do that, you might miss it. And many of us were in just like a constant state of panic that we had missed it, right? And that's what I love about the connection of Ikigai, in that the purpose that you have is to live out that essence of you and why you were brought into this earth. And that was to be you in every way, in every expression that you can be. The various aspects or experiences of that expression can be different. So you mentioned in the intro, in my life, I have been, in my careers, I have been a disc jockey, I have been a sergeant in the Marine Corps, right, an engineer, and all these different things. And yet in every one of, and 8th grade girls basketball coach that went to national championships and didn't win.
Congrats.
And in all of those things, I was able to live out my Ikigai. It's just an expression. Those are just expressions of your Ikigai. So it's not like you were called to be an accountant. And so if you're not an accountant, you're missing it somehow. That's an aspect of it, and you can live out your Ikigai in that. And so if we want to connect that, and I know I personally do, Ikigai to God's will, it's living my essence and the person that I am in the fullest way that I can, connected to him in the greatest way that I can, and connecting it tightly to those expressions. So last time we talked about our authentic selves, and that word's gotten a little watered down. I refer to more of the essence, right? The essence of you. And when we're not living that true self, we're disintegrated, right? It's an integrity issue in the sense of being integrated into you. So when you're working in a job that does not allow you to be the real you and live out your essence, you're disintegrating a bit when you're doing that. And so it doesn't matter so much what the job is. It might be the environment and the place that you're working and the types of things that you're doing, or the persona that you must present in order to be accepted and successful there. That's the kind of thing that you can do wrong, if you will. It's not wrong, but in the sense of not living into your Ikigai. And so that's the importance there, not so much the tasks or the type of work or that kind of thing, but the ability to live out your authentic self and in the fullness of what you feel like is your purpose.
You remind me that in Judaism, we have 3 categories of commandments or spiritual concepts between man and God, man in the sense of human, not male, between man and his neighbor or his fellow, and between man and himself. And this goes back to the model of the patriarchs, of which we make a tremendous focus. That Abraham was the first Jew. He focused on precepts between man and his fellow. His son Isaac was completely focused on his relationship with God. And Jacob came along and he developed the concept of between man and himself, meaning finding one's balancing point between those 2 poles. If I'm fully focused on God, how can I focus on people? If I'm fully focused on people, how can I focus on God? Abraham and Isaac created the bookends. And every one of us has some place, whereas I like the way you said it, your essential self resides naturally somewhere on that spectrum. And we're looking, each of us is looking, where do I fit? Where does my nature, my natural inclination incline me so that I can make the most of my natural gifts and successfully implement and fulfill the purpose for which I was created?
I love that. Oh, I'm taking notes here.
You can listen to the recording.
Yes,
That was great. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that our speaker today talks about is how to do this. And you have a new project that I think will help everyone. Why don't you have a chance to share this exciting new project that you've created?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So in Ikigai, there is a concept called moai, which has a number of meanings, but the specific aspect of it that I'm looking at is connection to friends and family and culture and support in living out your Ikigai.
Can you spell that for us, David? Can you spell that for us?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. MOAI. And it's coincidentally enough, just like the moai of the Easter Island statues, but it doesn't mean the same thing at all. So if you Google it, you might have to specify Ikigai and moai. And that's that's often credited for like longevity in Okinawan society, for example, that it's a very big aspect of Ikigai in Okinawa. And they celebrate the elderly and celebrate the family and friends and spending time together in community. And what I want to do is build out that community and create a Moai opportunity with daily Ikigai. And part of what I have enjoyed with my connection with folks on LinkedIn and things is sharing daily different ways to live into your Ikigai, to express that in those various ways that we were talking about earlier. And there's just a limit to that. And so I'm super excited about the opportunity to create a Moai community on dailyikigai.substack.com, where people can come, read, get some daily inspiration, get information and connection to others and other things about Ikigai, and create that dialogue around sharing and creating community.
I can't wait to sign up. You can tell that he's a polished keynoter, huh? Published author, Six Sigma leader. When did you discover your Ikigai, and how do you define your Ikigai, sir?
Sure. Yeah. So the essence of even understanding Ikigai for me has almost 2 points in time. And I'll share the first one because it's more topical and it kind of relates to understanding it today. About 7 years ago, I could see that my career was probably not going to end the way I had originally planned. I was leading a transformation effort at a large Fortune 500 company, a very storied company, great company, still a great company. But I could just tell they were changing. The company itself was changing, the direction was changing. And you can only be interested in dramatic organizational innovation and change for so long as sort of wanes. And I could see that was happening. So I got on LinkedIn and started just writing to express myself, to connect with people, because the last thing you need to do is try and start networking when you're out of work. And so I thought I'll get ahead of it and just do that. And what it afforded me was an opportunity to really express myself in ways I had never done before. And so I started asking friends and family, hey, this is really me. What would you say my brand was? Just putting stuff out there. It wasn't, a lean engineer. It wasn't Sergeant Marine Corps. It wasn't anything other than just my heart. And I got some really good feedback. One guy said to me, I don't know about brand, but you ought to look into Ikigai. And I said, well, what's that? He goes, just do it. Just look into it. That's all I told him. So when I dug into it, then I found out that I finally had a name really for what I had been interested in and had been doing for really almost 30 years. And that was sort of my introduction to the tangible name of Ikigai. My own reflection actually goes back more than 20 years to a dream, interestingly enough, that I had. In the dream, it'll be another sports reference that has nothing to do with sports, but Steve Mariucci was the coach of the San Francisco 49ers that I just despise. I don't like the 49ers. They're like my least favorite team, but he came to me in a dream and asked me, what would you do if you were done? And that was it. And then I woke up. And he said it twice, but you have lots of dreams and some stick. I can still see that in my head. That was that impactful of a moment in that dream, and it just stuck with me. And I really began to add it to my prayer life to say, what does this mean? What does it mean when you're done? And I began a path of very deep reflection. I'd always been somewhat reflective, but really seeking to understand myself, my place. At the time, I was 40 years old. I suppose a rather important demarcation point in life. My kids were heading into high school, and my career was really at its zenith. And I was thinking, what does that mean? What would be done? Done career? Done trying to climb? Then what? And that's the question I've been asking myself, for years and years and years. And understanding then that was the journey toward a deeper understanding of Ikigai for me.
We're delighted that you had the courage to do that.
And
Oh, yeah.
your journey, your journey is one of, and I think we hear this a lot, going from one vocation to another without necessarily any apparent connection from one to the next. And yet, I'm sure that when you look back, you can see how every stopping point along the way contributed to you reaching the point where you are now. Remind me of my wife. Was a trained, I guess she is still a trained concert violinist. She played in philharmonics and symphonies, and then she hurt herself. She got tendonitis and had to stop. So she went into radio advertising, and then was very successful in that. And then she became religious, moved to Israel. When I was offered a job as a teacher, she was offered a job in the same school. And then she took off a couple of years because we had 4 children, 5 and under, and good for her to stay home for a couple of years. And then the rabbi in our rabbi, he had a son who had Down syndrome. And he and his wife asked my wife if they would work with him, with their son. She had no experience in special ed whatsoever. But she wanted something that was part-time and flexible, and she wanted to be able to help out this family that we're close to. And she started working with their son. And the woman who was supervising them told my wife that she was doing things intuitively that they teach in graduate school. She just had this natural predisposition to working with kids with disabilities. And now she's almost 20 years into her career as a special ed teacher, and is tremendously successful in a career that she never would have looked into on her own if not for the providential series of events that led her there. So if I sort of apply this to what you're telling us, it was that finding one's Ikigai can be something that really takes a lifetime, and that it requires us to be attentive to ourselves and attentive to the circumstances in which we find ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's a great example of this at work, as well as that building of that talent stack. There's no doubt that those experiences she had either supported or maybe even gave her that skill, right, that enabled her to help those folks at the end. And that's the power of having some level of understanding of it and then just living into it, right? Because you can't, so for a number of years, I thought my radio career was a waste of time because it ended, right? It ended, and it wasn't what I thought I would do ultimately. And I looked at 7 years of I wasted that, right? Now I can't even imagine my overall career without that skill, without the ability to speak, without the comfort of talking to large audiences, of being able to convey thought with sound, right? To be able to say things in a certain way, to emphasize things, to make videos. I have people, and part of what I'll be sharing on the daily Ikigai are some very short videos, and being able to do that comes from those years of being on mostly radio. I think I've shared with you guys before, I have a face for radio, but I did do some TV. Not very much, but I did some TV, and it's all those skills, right? I had a few people ask me, well, Ikigai, how are you the this or the that of Ikigai? And I'm like, I don't know, but I am, I think, one of a kind in the person who brings those versatile guru skills of bringing Kaizen and lean and improvement skills and that kind of element, along with engineering understanding, along with storytelling and communication, and an understanding of self-reflection, and then the concept of Ikigai. I present a one-of-a-kind way to help people live into that. And that only came about through those failed careers that seem to have no connection, but now make perfect sense and have all, aligned and come together.
That's amazing. How about the people that are out there listening that say, well, somehow he was able to connect all of his skills into a lovely stack and a path. But what if someone says, no, I really am just wasting my talent or my time? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I probably only have 10 people a day say that to me. So
I think now a lot of people are rethinking things as the world has changed and the way we work and think about things has changed. What do you say to them?
Yeah, so I share with them some of my background because I have been in those moments. I also share with them that investing in yourself and getting a better understanding of Ikigai is going to lead you to either being able to express it in the job you're in, let's say, for example, or to know what you should look for in finding another one. And a lot of folks will reach out to me when they're in career transition and they want me to help them find the job that's their Ikigai. Well, do you know your Ikigai yet? so myself, for example, as I mentioned, my career ended differently than I thought. My department got eliminated, and they came to me with a job offer. It was a fine job, and I would have continued in a role, but it had nothing to do with what energizes me or I would have been disintegrating every day that I went in to work in that role for 5 more years. Or I could take an early retirement and do what I'm doing now. And so because I had that strong understanding of my Ikigai, I could say yes to the right thing and no to the wrong thing. And that's what really empowered me, because the safe thing would have been to say yes. And let me tell you, 6-7 months later, when the pandemic hit, I was thinking, ooh, did I make the right decision? But I had that sense that I was in the right spot, and it ultimately played out and has been just a marvelous gift to me, really. But it wouldn't have been available to me had I not invested in understanding my Ikigai.
It's amazing how it's not magic at all. It's really about self-reflection and courage. It's interesting. The whole thing of self-reflection, you've become quite an expert in not only your own self-reflection, but helping others go there. And you've coined the term monotasking, which I love, because too many people waste all sorts of effort trying to do more than one thing at a time, and they're proud of it. Tell us about self-reflection and this odious task of monotasking.
Right. So we think about multitasking, right? That's the thing. I can be doing this. I could be typing over here. I could be talking to my kids. You really can't do that. It's actually been proven by many studies now that not only is it not, you're not doing 3 things at once, you're losing time in between each switch. So each time you switch from one activity to another, you lose a bit of time. Your brain has to reset. You have to ramp back up into interest in your new thing, and doing that multiple times, not to mention add in the interrupt that we have with our phones and other things like that, right? We are being highly unproductive if productivity is our goal. Being focused on a singular thing allows you to stay in that moment. There's an element of presence, right? So being present in the moment, our brains are flitting so often that we're just all over the place, and we realize, wow, 3 hours is gone and I've got nothing done. As opposed to when you're truly into the present moment, focused on what you're doing, that's when I know for myself, I do my best work. That's when I do my best self-reflection. That's when I do my best writing. Eliminating those distractions and doing one thing. I call monotasking the new thing, right? It's the new productivity hack. Just do one thing at a time. Do it well.
You talked about this on your last visit with us, and it may have been shortly thereafter that I became conscious of how much of an intrusion my phone was on my life. And I'd be working in my office, and every few moments this buzzing, and I'm always checking and just going. And I went and I turned off my notifications. I left on the telephone. And other than that, I turned everything off. And, I never missed those buzzing alerts. And I was able to have considerably more focus on the work I'm doing. I mean, are we suffering from collective FOMO? That we
Yes.
feel that if we don't have all these alerts, something important might pass us by.
Right.
Despite the experience that tells us that really there's not very much of importance that we're going to miss.
Yeah. It's it's incessant because I recently got on Twitter actively, and I don't spend a lot of time on there. I'm using it to share Ikigai insights and daily Ikigai. And I'd say maybe every fifth time I look at it, it pops up with a screen over the top. Do you want to set up notifications? It's like, no, I do not. I don't. Facebook wants you to set up notifications. This one sets, and you're right. On top of it being a problem, it's like we're inundated with requests to do that too. And yeah, it's an incredible distraction. And I forget what it is, but the amount of time, it's many minutes. So if I'm talking to you for 30 seconds and I break to do something over here and then come back, it's not like just the time it took me to switch over. It's several minutes before I can return to a focused level of attention, even if I'm talking with you. And so you think about that with your phone and the buzzing and the interrupts and all of the things. Yeah, I have this is my running watch, and it has the capability of notifying me of many, many things. And I've had to systematically turn them off. It's like, I want to know the time when I look at this, and I want to know how fast I'm running. That's it. I don't really want anything else from this. And
I know, and learning how to turn those notifications off is an interesting and empowering event. Well, this whole idea of the collective FOMO, more and more of us, I think, don't do self-reflection because we feel first we must be caught up on all our email, on reading all our social media, knowing what every little country is doing. All of that. Speak to the issue of, in a world with so many delicious distractions, how does one decide their mono focus?
Sure. Yeah. So I have been saying for a number of years now, more muse, less news. So
I like that.
I was a newsman. I mean, I used to read the news and find the news, interview people, do things like that. And it took me a while to overcome that thinking like, well, no, this is important. It's really not important. And people will ask me, how do you keep up on things? It's like, I somehow seem to know what I need to know. I remember when the pandemic first really kicked in, I thought, maybe I need to, this is pretty big. I better follow, or I'm going to lose out on something. And oh my gosh, after just a few days of watching the news again, and I'm not picking on any particular venue, NBC or Fox or all of them, they're all interested in getting you riled up and paying attention to what they have to say and staying riled up and paying attention to what they have to say, and shutting that out and eliminating that. I mean, I used to justify it because of the weather, but now you got an app on your phone. You can check the weather anytime. You don't have to watch the news for the weather. So there's really not a lot of reason to do that. And there's a lot of reason not to. So that's one thing. Then I know I used to find, and we were talking earlier about basketball, grew up in Indiana, played basketball, love sports, just really, really got into it. And for a while I switched off of like news radio or talk radio and was starting to listen to sports radio. And it became the same thing. Instead of arguing about politics, they were arguing about sports. And do I really care if Brett Favre is the greatest quarterback, or Aaron Rodgers, or Bart Starr, or whoever else, right? I don't. And I was finding myself involved in things that really were not adding value to my life. And that's the key thing. It's like, does it really add value to your life? More muse, less news. So reading, and I've tried to add a poem a day to my habit. So I do that instead of start the morning with news. I start the morning with a poem. And we were talking about Robert Frost earlier too, and one of my favorites.
Mine too.
it's a much that kind of thing especially can trigger that reflective mindset and encourage you to spend a moment pondering something again besides what Senator so-and-so said to Senator so-and-so and so forth, right?
And
That
like so
makes
many
sense.
things, there's a balance. I mean, we should be informed. We should know what's going on in the world. We should be aware of what's happening with Ukraine, and even to the point of being somewhat emotionally involved, because it's it's horrific what's happening there. So cutting ourselves off completely may not be the correct approach, but I and many others have observed that in many ways we've returned to the ways of the Roman Empire with the bread and circuses. The bread is the entitlement culture. We're going to give you what you need. And the circuses is the entertainment industry. We're going to know exactly what buttons to push to keep you engaged so that you won't be thinking about anything else, like ideas that might disrupt the stability of the empire. Back then it was gladiatorial fights. Today it's sports. It's what passes for political debate. It's arguing about any kind of social issue. It's all of those devices that are designed to get our adrenaline pumping and make us feel alive, when in fact we're not doing anything that intrinsically is contributing to being alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a little like people will tell me they can't read, they don't have time to read. And I had a manager that I was mentoring one time, and he said, "Yeah, I know I need to read these books, and I know it would help me in my career. I just don't have time." I'm like, really? Okay. Do you ever watch The Big Bang Theory? I knew he did, right? He's kind of a geeky guy, so he enjoyed it. And he goes, "Well, yeah." I said, "You ever watch a show more than once?" He goes, "Yeah, all the time." "And how long are those shows?" Half an hour. I see where you're going. We invest, and I agree with you. There is that balance. And I really, again, having been a newsman, struggled with that. And I find I literally don't watch the news at all. And yet I am aware of Ukraine. I am aware of the things going on in the world enough that I'm aware. And if I want to dig deeper, I can dig deeper. I'm not allowing myself to have the churn that you were going through, identifying there earlier, and involve myself and be upset and those things. I mean, I want to be aware enough to be praying about it, to be taking action if there is some literal action I could do, that kind of thing. And everything else, I want to separate myself, in part because I want to invest that time in my own development, self-reflection, being present for my family, right? Being there. If you're stirred up with all the news of the day, are you there? Are you listening to your kid? Are you back processing all this stuff and not really listening to your child or your wife or your friend or whomever? And so that's another reason to drop some of this, is to really give yourself what we call an IT bandwidth, right? Capacity for the other investments that you want to make into yourself. And that's even in my coaching, that's what I'll do with folks is, especially people that are really into it and really stirred up and just churning and unable to get the noise level down. As an RF engineer, we're all old enough to remember AM radio, and when you drive under power lines, you get all that static and stuff, right? And that's noise, and that noise is so loud it's drowning out the signal, the intended information you need. And life can be like that. There's that intended information we need, and if we let distractions and worry and all the other things be that noise level, we don't get the signal from life that we need to have. And so a lot of times that's the first thing I do with my clients, is just get the noise level down in their life enough that they could hear that still small voice that they need to hear. And that's a first thing. And I had one client not that long ago go, "I can't believe the difference in my life after just 3 weeks of trying to get the noise level down." He goes, I'm starting to understand a few things. I'm like, oh, how about that? That's amazing, isn't it? That's the other part of this, right? Setting up your life, setting up the environment where you can be in a moment of reflection, where you can spend some time uncovering that Ikigai. And I emphasize that word uncovering over discover, right? Or create, because it's there, right? We're born with all this. We're fearfully and wonderfully made. Before you were born, I knit you in the womb, right? It's what tradition tells us. And that essence is there. And then life starts to happen. And even, good friends and parents will kind of pile things on, and disappointments and all these things kind of cover that up. And this process is really uncovering and identifying that essence and allowing it to be understood as opposed to discovered.
Recently, I worked with a high-level team that had something very bad happen because of choices they made that were less than lovely. The CEO whispered to me at a meeting where I was supposed to be understanding where they were and delivering this sage advice. And he whispered to me quietly, "We don't have time for reflection. Could you just tell us what we need to be knowing?" And I laughed so hard, I was crying. It was just the two of us, and he realized what he was saying. But the truth is, it takes a lot of courage to slow down and to really look at ourselves, because sometimes in a crisis, we begin to believe a falsehood that we're not enough, that we're not good enough, we don't know enough, we haven't done enough. And I think that that's a falsehood. Like you said, uncovering the Ikigai, it's there. And taking the time to follow what our guest is talking about, our Ikigai guy, I think that is the secret of the universe. It's so scary.
Well, there's when I was teaching, I always relied heavily on the Socratic Method because I wanted to guide my students to see that they have many of the answers themselves. And I experienced exactly like yours, doctors. This very bright young lady in my high school class got enormously frustrated. Why can't you just tell us the answer? And of course, we know Socrates for the unexamined life is not worth living. But we also know where that got him. He was found guilty of corrupting the youth of Athens for the high crime of trying to make them think.
Well, and it's not such a popular pastime, is it?
It has plenty of modern day parallels there.
So we're getting to the point where, Rabbi, why don't we have you do the word of the day? And then we come back. Why don't we have David E. Marlow impart to us some words of wisdom, and then we're going to ask him about his next fun adventure. Rabbi?
The word of today is actually the term of the day. It's one I discovered a while ago, but I just came back to it this week. The term is hedonic adaptation.
Oh, I love that.
Ah, so you know this one.
I've lived it.
I knew you would. Well, what is hedonic adaptation? It means the return to our emotional default settings that follows experiential peaks and valleys. And I think it's so relevant. We talk often about happiness on our program and in the world at large. And we all want to be happy, but we don't necessarily define what that is or how it happens. And we conflate pleasure with happiness. And so we've been talking about particularly the effect of technology on it. And why do we like the buzzing on our phone? Well, we know it's distracting us because every time it buzzes, we get a little hit of dopamine. And that feels good. And it only lasts a second, but it feels good. And there's another one and another one. And what this does is it disrupts our natural psychological rhythm of peaks and valleys. We're supposed to have high points, we're supposed to have low points, and we're supposed to be constantly moving from one to another. That's what makes us feel alive. what's the natural plateau to which we return when we're not in the peaks or valleys? That defines our state of happiness. And it's a continuous state. It's not those moments of excitement or exhilaration or pleasure. That's not real, because a plateau is always a plateau, no matter how high it is or how low it is. It's the differentiation between states of being that really create within us that sense of having meaningful, fulfilling lives. And so when we seek, and the research on this is really compelling. They found that lottery winners a year later were right back where they were before they won the lottery. And people who were paralyzed, lost the use of their legs, a year later, they were right back where they were before their paralysis. So these external factors that we think have so much to do with our state of mind really have very little. It's up to us to set that default. And the Ikigai, I think, is a wonderful device and tool for us to use and to discover or to uncover, so that the greater awareness we have, that hedonic adaptation, we will return to a state that is exactly where we should be and where we feel the fullness of our lives.
Way deep, Rabbi.
That's why I make the big bucks.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love the expression at the end, but I love what you just said about happiness and that base level. It's so powerful because you're right. Events come and go, things come and go, successes come and go. But that base level is there. One thing I really admire about my granddaughter, or I should say my oldest granddaughter, and I have a new granddaughter. My first granddaughter, who is thank you, who's 4. She was playing with me, and she when I say playing with me, she's directing me. She should be like a movie director. So, okay, you sit here and you say these 3 things. I will do this, and then no, start again. I mean, that's kind of her. But she was talking to one of her stuffed animals. She calls him P Bear, and she said she was going to toss him to me, and I said, well, I think P Bear might be a little afraid. She goes, looks at P Bear and says, P Bear, be happy and brave like me. And that's her. I mean, she's happy and brave. And she says that a lot to all her stuffed animals. That'll be her admonition to
That
them.
is so nice.
And isn't that sweet? Be happy and brave like me.
Aww.
And so even encouraging them, but that's kind of her baseline, feel and vibe. And certainly she has her moments that she's not happy or brave, but that's what she sees as her driver. But I love that, because and you're right, there's a connection when you are connected to yourself, to reason that you were placed on this earth. The external aspects of life aren't as important. And that's where, again, I try and help people separate from career. It's not about career. Career can be fun. Career can be rewarding. Career can be meaningful and helpful to people in the world. We just can't attach our worth to that or our self to that. A quick example of that in play was, again, when my department got eliminated, the executive VP in charge of that department got eliminated too. And he had been at the company from the time he graduated college to his mid-50s. So a long time. And that was kind of his life. And he really struggled. I mean, he struggled with it. He asked me, Dave, how is it that you're okay with this? And I said, I understand my Ikigai, and this is not it. So the fact that this has disappeared is irrelevant to me. I mean, there's tactical relevance and certainly acknowledge that. But in terms of my self-worth or the way I feel about myself, it's really not that big a deal. And for him, it was a big deal. And it was a struggle for him for quite a long while, because that was his identity. Has he? He was working on it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He super interesting guy. And he would come to me once in a while and say, I need you to do your Jedi mind tricks on me. So he was working into it. At the same time, this guy at one point, I was asking him some questions, and he asked me a question, I should say, at one point, and he goes, and don't ask me a question in response. He just wanted the answer.
Just like the rabbi student. So we're going to send him some love that he may find his Ikigai, although with a friend like you, I'm sure he has a pretty good chance of finding it.
Yeah, he's a super guy too. Yeah.
Well,
but just a different experience.
So in terms of final words of wisdom, how would you set our audience off to pondering?
Okay. So I always love to give people small things to do because that's the easiest to do. It's how we start almost anything. I've run marathons, but 11 years ago now, I started running by running for a minute and walking for 4 minutes and running for 1 minute and walking for 4. So starting small. Embrace the idea that your Ikigai is there, right? Embrace that idea and just accept that it's there and that your job, if you will, in life is to uncover that and then to live into it. And then spend some time in investing in it. Invest a small amount in yourself, in time and reflection. One thing that I always like to do is get people to get, I call it the verbs, value, and verse. And I spend time initially on my own Ikigai saying, what are my values? What are my verbs? What are the things that activate me? And I developed my verse. And my verse is, I'm about encouraging, enabling, and empowering people to live into their purpose.
I love that.
And just having that gave me a conversation piece to share with friends, to share with like both of you, and you can give me feedback and I can refine that. And a starting point, and understand that your Ikigai is going to be very wide at the beginning and narrow over time. And to the rabbi's point earlier, you never really reach that point, right? But you get better and better and a deeper understanding of it every day that you invest in it.
Wow, that was fantastic. And then the rabbi and I were talking, we want to know, what is your next adventure, sir? Something fun.
Yeah, so something fun. I'm going to be helping out with my grandson's t-ball again this year, except I guess not t-ball anymore. Now it's coach's pitch, which is going to be even more interesting. He and I were out in the yard just the other day, and I was pitching to him, and let me tell you what, that kid can hit a ball and hit it fast right back at me. So that's a fun adventure. But that and spending time with our grandkids and my youngest daughter and her husband, some things changed in their timing, and so we've ended up now we're taking care of their daughter, our youngest granddaughter, a couple days a week. So that's a new and exciting adventure and fun and tiring all at the same time.
It is.
And that's a good point to home in on, that things can be fun and challenging at the same time. And often it's the challenge that creates the fun, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we need a little bit, right? We need a little bit of challenge or no fun. I was going deep on this the other day, and they brought me back to a little bit of reality and made, I think, a better analogy of that in video games, right? If you're playing a video game, the first level is a little hard, right? But not very hard, because if it was so hard you couldn't overcome it, then you'd quit. But it's a little hard. And then the next level is a little harder, but now you've been playing for a while, so you got a skill. And so you just keep moving up. And I think our brains are kind of wired for that too, that just in life, as a runner, we will say, the hills are a problem until they aren't. I mean, we're running a hill, that's tough until you've gotten strong enough. I've got hills around me now that I don't even notice that I ran a hill because I've been running them for years. But when I first started running, I was like, oh my gosh, I got this hill ahead of me. Yeah, challenge. You got to have some challenge though, right? If everything was super easy, it'd be no fun at all. Like I hate tic-tac-toe. My youngest, my grandson likes to play tic-tac-toe, but it's so boring because, I mean, there's only so many things you can do, right? But for him, it's a challenge. So it's fun.
There's a classic Twilight Zone episode about this gangster who who dies, and apparently he's gone to heaven because they give him anything he wants. You know, he can rob banks, he can win in the casinos, he can get all the girls he wants, and he's out on a ball. And after a while, he just gets incredibly bored. And he finally says to his guardian angel, you know, I think you made a mistake. I don't belong in heaven. You should have sent me to the other place. He says, but sir, you are in the other place. And Rod Serling comes on and he says, our gangster who has everything he ever wanted and is stuck with it.
Oh, that's great. I don't remember that one. That's awesome.
I'll have to check that one out again. I love that show. Oh, well, we've come to an end of a lovely episode of The Rabbi and the Shrink. David E. Marlow, thanks again for joining us. You truly give us so much to think about. I urge everyone to check out dailyikigai.substack.com. And I'm going to remember the stack as you talked about skill and experience stacking, which I think is a great phrase. And I'm going to remind everyone, you have your Ikigai there. Our guest tells us all we need to do is uncover it. So with some courage and a bit of shared faith from all of us and some happiness, I believe you can achieve your Ikigai. Until the next episode, we are The Rabbi and the Shrink, and check us out at therabbiandtheshrink.com. Thank you and have fun.
Thank you for listening to The Rabbi and the Shrink, Everyday Ethics Unscripted. To book Dr. Redshoe, Dr. Margarita Guri, or Rabbi Yonason Goldson as speakers or advisors for your organization, contact them at therabbiandtheshrink.com. This has been a Dr. Redshoe production.